Flipping houses. Ha! That is one of the most fun and rewarding things that you can do as a real estate investor. But all the money in every flip I've ever done was made when I bought the property. It wasn't made when I sold it. It wasn't made when I was holding it. It wasn't made off beating up contractors. It was made when I bought the property. Okay. So that's why I created this tool, because nobody has a tool like this that can give the scenarios based on real world experience that this tool can give. Okay. So we're going to dive into this. The purpose of this tool is when you're looking at a flip to be able to run some numbers and decide for yourself if there's enough meat on the bone or not. Because the real estate market is very efficient and those margins have compressed so much that you have to be very careful. All right. And no matter where you are or where you're watching this from, if you need some help, reach out. You can hire me as a consultant, even if it's not in my real estate market. I'm a broker and a property manager in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. But even if it's outside of our market, I can still help you chop up numbers. I might even have some lenders that would be interested in lending to you. Okay. As long as you're in the US and you meet some criteria, that's a conversation we can have. Okay. So let's dive into the sheet. So you got the flip analyzer. It's pretty simple, guys. All right. So there's three parts to a flip that are very important, and you have to make sure you understand where you stand on those three stages of the flip. Okay. So stage one is your entry strategy. Okay. This is the buy. So you got to make sure when you're buying it, you're doing it right. Okay. Step two is the holding cost. This is the part I think most people screw up because they underestimate how expensive it is to own an empty property that you're fixing up, especially if you're using hard money, someone else's money. Okay. And then step three is our exit strategy. Okay. So that's what this sheet is so good at, is being able to put all three of those together quickly and spit out an answer for you here on the right to determine if it's worth your time or not. And at the end of the day, this is all that matters, guys, is cash on cash return. Okay. What are you making back on your money to make it worth doing or not? So if you're in a project for 6 months and you make 12%, okay, annualized, that's a 24% rate of return. That's a lot of risk. Can you get that somewhere else? That's a question you got to ask yourself. Okay. Because if you screw up and take just a little longer, that return's cut in less than half, and pretty soon you got nothing. So all right, so let's dive into it. So as always, with all these tools that we have right here, the user entries is this very specific color. Okay. So these are the only boxes you can type in. Okay. Anything that's that peach color. If you type anywhere else, you're going to screw up a formula. All right. Unfortunately, it's a limitation of Google Sheets. I don't know how to lock it out, but it is what it is. But if you mess up, I always have the direct link right here in the sheet that you can just click to go back to and re-download it. Okay. So all you're going to do, the very first thing when you click on this link, you're going to go to File, Make a Copy. Okay. Because the version online is locked out. You can't edit it. So you make a copy of it, save it. So you click Make a Copy, and then it's yours. It's unlocked. Do whatever you want with it. Okay. And you have two tabs, the actual flip analyzer and then the resources, which has the direct link. It's got my Google link. So if you enjoyed this tool, hook your boy up with a review. And it's, as always, got my cell phone. So you can, if you're watching this and you're into this, you're the kind of person I want to talk to, please don't dox my cell phone number. Just call your boy up if you need some help. All right. So again, we'll put in, if this is the property we're looking at, 21 Main Street, Fall River, MA. All right. Just put the address in case you're doing a few of these, you're evaluating different deals. Okay. So you got to decide. All right. So if you notice on the entry, there's a couple of different sections. Okay. So this is built for hard money loans. Okay. So this hard money loan number is going to be what you put in here. So what's going in the loan? All right. Are you borrowing just the purchase? Are you borrowing purchase and rehab? Are they going to let you float the closing costs in the loan? Depending on your lender. Okay. So that's what goes here. Okay. If you're doing rehab not in the loan, it goes here. All right. If there's other closing costs not in the loan, and then upfront points. Okay. So what do I mean by points? So there's really like three numbers you got to know for a hard money lender. And this is how you shop around. Okay. You got points, the rate, and the loan to value. Okay. So hard money loan, very risky for the lender. And they're typically short-term loans. So they do want points up front, which is a percentage of the loan paid at closing on top of the interest payment, right? Because if I'm taking all this risk and I'm loaning you $400,000 for 4 months and I'm getting 12%, that means I'm getting $4,000 a month for 4 months. That's $16,000. Maybe that's enough risk for me. Maybe it's not. But if I charge you 4 points at closing, I just doubled my return and it made it a little more worth my time. Okay. So that's what you got to know. So if your lender's 4 and 12, then you would put the points there and the amount here. So let's just say your lender's really good and they're 2 and 12. Okay. You see right here, points paid up front, that changes. That's calculated based on that, based on the loan amount, which comes from here. Okay. So for us, and then the loan to value is how much are they going to loan you? Okay. So if you are borrowing, if it's typically they want 80%, you got to have some skin in the game. Okay. And that'll tell you right there. So your cost basis for the loan is $340,000. All right. Your points paid up front cost not in the loan. In this case, we'll say they're going to give you 80% of everything. All right. So you can see kind of how these numbers change, how things move around. Okay. This is a sheet that does not exist. This is based on years of experience, different scenarios for clients. So, it takes a little bit of kind of familiarization, but it gives you a lot of different avenues. Okay. What if you're not doing a hard money loan? It's all your own cash. Real easy. Right here, hard money loan to value, change that to 0. Okay. And that's the money you got to bring in, and it'll give you a cash on cash return based on your cash. Okay. So in this case, we're just going to say 80%. Okay. So the purchase price of the property is $340,000. All right. Our rehab budget's $100,000. That's a number. You got to calculate that on your own and just plug that number here. Okay. There's different solutions out there. I've thought about making sheets to calculate a rehab budget. At the end of the day, it's so market specific. There's so many variables to that. You're getting in this flipping game. You got to have the contractors. You got to have the ability to know, what the rehab cost is. So however you calculate that, you can plug that number in here if you're borrowing it in a hard money loan, or you can throw it here if it's outside of the loan. If it's a cash deal and you're not using a hard money lender, it doesn't matter what box, just plug it in once. Okay. And then closing costs additional. All right. And then other upfront costs not in the loan. So this is your closing costs, right? Your title insurance, your title search, whatever your whatever your attorney's charging, title company, however that works in your local area. All right. So that's your cost basis plus upfront cost is $449,040 on this deal. Okay. Now, say you need $97,000 to close. Say you got a HELOC on your house and you want to tap that. Okay. So you got $150,000 HELOC. All right. At 7%. So really you're not using any of your own money. Okay. So that's fine. That'll calculate that. So it shows you how much of the HELOC you're going to use at closing. Okay. So basically you got $150,000. You need $88,000 to close. That's what you're going to tap from your HELOC. You got $62,000 left in your HELOC. You can use that to pay your carrying costs every month. And according to this, you're good for about 10 months. All right. On the 11th, 12th month, you're going to have to start coming out of pocket. Okay. Now that's our entry strategy. Okay. So that's our numbers up front. Okay. Now we got to hold this place. Okay. So our HELOC requires an $875 a month payment. That's automatically calculated based on the rate and the total amount of HELOC you're going to use. Okay, our hard money lender, that's their payment. So our total monthly debt service is $43.95. Okay, now you got taxes on this property. You got insurance on this property. Okay, remember, insurance is expensive because you're running a vacant building policy. Okay, so that's not cheap insurance. Okay. You got to call your insurance guy, figure out what that is, the taxes, okay? And then any utilities, you got electric, gas, water, whatever, right? What is that going to cost a month? So taxes and insurance are annual, utilities are monthly, and then these are 2 blanket boxes, one for some annual cost, other, and then one for some monthly cost, other. Okay, so your monthly carry cost is $53.95. Okay, $53.95. Okay, so that's your holding costs a month. So that carries over here. So after 2 months, that's $10,790. After 4 months, so this just goes in 2-month chunks, right? after 6 months, after 8 months, and so on and so forth. So that's tabulating it up. If you're going to use your HELOC to pay that, that calculates here. Again, type in these boxes, you'll ruin the sheet. This tells you kind of when you got to start finding some more cash to put in the deal, okay? And then your HELOC balance owed as you go forward. If you were going to close today, what would you owe back to the HELOC? What do you owe your hard money lender? Okay, and the topic. All right, so our HELOC balance owed, our hard money lender owed. Okay, so this tells you kind of what you're going to owe over time. All right, and maybe you're only using enough HELOC to close, so you need $88,000. That's all you want to tap off your HELOC. That zeroes out. Okay, so I'm sorry, that's wrong. So you have your $449,040. That's your total cost. So that's what it's adding. So you want to add that in there. So you need $88,000 for your hard money guy, $9,000 extra for your closing costs because that's your points and everything like that. So that would be a total of $97.40. Let's see if my mental math is good. Booyah! All right, $97.40. Okay, and that's your cash to close. All right, so there you go. So in this case, I'm just going to use that. Bam. All right, so we got that. So now the next thing is you want to sell the place. Okay, so you got your broker fee. Okay, so that's what are you going to pay your guy? What are you going to pay the other guy? All right, so we charge 3% for our services, and then the other agent, you got to pay them. So let's just call it 5%. And then your other selling costs, 2%, right? That's your deed stamp, your lawyer fees to sell, everything like that, okay? So that's your inputs. So these are all your inputs that you got to put in, okay? Now, and you could play around with it again, depending on what you want to do, what your strategy is. So let's just say you're bringing cash with no HELOC, all right? We'll keep it mad simple. So you got to come up with $100K. Your loan is $352, and that's what that looks like with your holding costs going in, okay? Now, what is this property worth on the back end? Okay, so we're paying $340, putting 100 into it. It's basically $440 plus all our holding costs and all that. Okay, let's say it's $600,000 on the back end, on the low end, and we think $700 on the high end. Okay, and this is just going to automatically divide it into tranches to tell you, kind of what the sale price would be. So if you sell for $620 and it takes you 6 months, you made $100,000. Okay. If you sell for $700, it takes you 6 months, you made $174. Okay. So this is kind of gives you an idea of where you're at. These are your holding costs. So let's say it's a 6-month project. We're pretty confident in that. Okay. This is what those numbers look like depending on your sale price. We'll go right down the middle. Say you sold it for $650. That's $128,340. Now remember, your cash in the deal is $124,160. Okay. So your return, so you have to put in 124, so that's your 97 at closing plus 27,000 of holding costs. Because remember, these selling costs come off the sales price. So you're not really putting that in. So you got 124,000 in, you're getting all of that back plus another 128. So we go right here, 6 month, 650. We come here, 6 month, 650. You made 103% in 6 months on your money. Not a bad investment, right? Annualized, that's 207%. Not a bad investment, okay? So this is how you set this up and you decide for yourself. Now, what if we think it's not going to be that good, right? It's 550 on the high end to maybe 600,000. Okay, market is soft where you're at. Whoops. All right, still not bad, right? So you got 120. So it's the same, right? Like remember, your inputs, your entry, your cost up front, and your holding costs don't change. Your selling costs are percentages, so they do change based on the sales price, which is why I did it that way, right? But you can see the margins are much more compressed. So now we go kind of down the middle there, 6 months, that's 58,590 on 124,000 at 575. It's about 47% in 6 months. Still not a bad return, but again, slimmer. So you got to be very confident in your timelines and your rehab budget. Okay, that's on you as a flipper. All right. So this is how the tool works. You can tweak it, manipulate it, adjust it to any scenario. Okay. Now say you were doing this with a HELOC and you did a $98,000 HELOC on your house. All right, it changes your return a little bit, right? Because now you really only have $20,000 in the deal. Do you see what I mean? That's just holding costs. Because technically that's somebody else's money, right? That's the bank's money. This is factoring the interest you pay and everything like that. All of a sudden, you're 20,000 in the deal. 6 months in at 575, that's $64,000 of profit, right? That's 312%. Okay, so you see how that changes? So that changes your whole rate of return depending on whose money you're using. You know what I mean? So just keep that in mind. All right, guys. So, and then these things shade, right? Like the lower numbers turn red, the higher numbers are darker green. You can see here, there's a potential for a 58,000% return on a zero, so it just depends on how you do it. All right. If you do all your own cash on this same deal, you're making about 20% on your money, right? So there's $82,000 of profit. So the profit's higher because you have no interest expense, right? You got no points up front, so maybe you have 450,000 laying around and you want to use it, deploy it this way. You're confident in that. 6 months, it's 86,000 in profit because your profit goes up because your holding costs are lower, so you're making about 19% on your money in 6 months. That's about 40% annualized, that's not a bad investment, All right, guys. So that's how our sheet works. Again, if you start clicking here and erase formulas, no big deal. Come over here to the resources tab. You can re-download it. All right. 5-star review it and call me directly with any questions. All right. If you're struggling with this and you want to hit me up, we can put something together. If you want me to maybe give you some advice on a deal, we can talk about that. Whatever you need. All right. If you're in Rhode Island or Massachusetts and you're buying a flip, holla at your boy as a broker. All right. So this is our flip analyzer tool as part of our investor toolkit. It's a free tool. Download it, use it, love it. All right, guys. Thank you very much. And give me some feedback in the comments and let me know what you think. All right, guys. Thank you.